The seaside suburb of Glenelg has a safe, welcoming tourist atmosphere today, but back in the 1980s there was a rougher edge to the locale. In the summer of 1982-83, tensions were boiling over under the influence of alcohol. On the 26th of December 1982, restricted Sunday hotel trading applied. The Pier Hotel, where the Stamford Grand is now, was closed between 4 and 6 p.m. A crowd had gathered on the lawn waiting and drinking from bottles they had purchased earlier. A man and a woman began fighting. When police intervened, a minor riot was precipitated. Police were pelted with beer bottles thrown from the crowd, and more were thrown at the police station, then situated on the opposite side of Mosley Square. 12 people were arrested, and 3 police suffered minor injuries. A second incident broke out about 7:30 p.m. Mosley Square was littered with broken beer bottles, and 28 people arrested. Police cars in the backyard of the station were damaged by bottles hurled over the roof of the station. By the time the brawls were addressed in court, 31 were charged and fined small amounts for their bad behaviour. On Tuesday night, the 28th of December 1982, a public holiday in South Australia, more trouble occurred. At 10 p.m, a 21-year-old man was stabbed in the back during a brawl involving a large group of youths at the sideshows on the Glenelg foreshore. Then around 11:30, 3 youths aged 18, 19 and 20 were attacked by a group of 10 to 12 Vietnamese youths armed with rifles, knives and nunchuckers near the sideshows again. They suffered minor injuries, mostly around their shoulders. Around midnight on the 28th of December, a 30-year-old man was outside his flat watching a confrontation between 2 groups of youths at the corner of Mosley Street and Elizabeth Street when he was shot in the back with birdshot. On the 29th of December 1982, just after midnight, 19-year-old Jeffrey John May of Athol Park was out celebrating with his girlfriend Tonya and some of his mates in Jetty Road. As the group of 10 young people walked along the main strip of Glenelg, another group of men and youths in 2 cars shouted at them. The first car was a white Valiant sedan. The second was a yellow Ford Escort. It's not known if May's group responded, but the others turned around and came back. Jeffrey and some of his friends drove off in a brown Toyota. At the intersection with Brighton Road, the Toyota was hemmed in by the other cars, which slammed into the sides of the car. Attempting to flee, the Toyota was driven along the tram lines leading away from Glenelg. The pursuing cars split up and drove on the roads both sides of the tram lines. The Toyota was driven all the way to the Sturt River Bridge, where it got stuck on the sleepers at about 12:30 a.m. Those in it got out and ran, except Jeffrey and his girlfriend. She was pregnant and could not run, and Jeffrey elected to stay to protect her. 2 men from the Valiant approached the car. The first was described as 6'1", with black hair, a black moustache and neatly trimmed black beard, with a strong build. He wore a white tank top with red stripes on the shoulders and dark trousers. Originally said to be about 30, the estimate of his age was quickly adjusted to 20 to 25. He was accompanied by a smaller man, 5'7", aged about 18 to 20, of medium muscular build. He was wearing a blue tank top and denim jeans. He had acne and a birthmark on his left cheek, and a tattoo on his upper left arm. May told them he had done nothing, but they assaulted him nevertheless. Whether intentionally or not, when he was hit, May fell from the bridge and hit the riverbed 18 feet below. The Sturt River here has a concrete-lined channel. He hit his head and was knocked unconscious. The attackers fled into the night. May was rescued from the river and rushed to the Flinders Medical Centre. Somebody who never identified themselves, but presumably one of those who had been out with Jeffrey, phoned his parents to let them know what had happened. Jeffrey's mother Alison was told by doctors that he had little hope of survival. Brain surgery had been performed, but he remained in a coma. Jeffrey John May never recovered, and at 3:25 p.m. on the 7th of January 1983, he died. He left behind his daughter Susan. While he was on life support, Tonya gave birth to a second daughter, who was named Jasmine. Almost 4 decades have now passed, and the identity of those who killed Jeffrey John May that violent summer's night remain unknown, despite a reward on offer of $200,000 to solve the case. The next year, a more serious riot occurred after an Australia Day concert at Collie Reserve on the 22nd of January 1984. A concert featuring the bands Sandy and the Sunsets and Pseudo Echo had been attended by about 15,000 people. During the concert, some young men were playfully fighting with ice blocks which they threw at each other. One of these hit a patrolling policeman. With a distinct lack of humour, the youth who threw the ice was grabbed by 4 police, and in front of concert-goers the police slammed his head into the bonnet of a car 4 times. The crowd began pelting the police with bottles as they took the young man away. Instead of letting tempers cool, the police were soon back and roughly arresting others. The crowd began pelting the police with bottles in a constant rain of glass. For a time, a small group of police were besieged inside the police station as the crowd chanted, "Kill the pigs." Family groups sheltered inside a fun parlour as the mob got worked up to a frenzy outside. For the first time, the Special Weapons Group, the Star Force, had to be called out to handle a riot. Although an unruly minority and the availability of alcohol was blamed, the riot was caused as much by bad policing. The riot lasted 4 hours, with people injured on both sides. A media car overturned and ransacked, a senior citizen centre had 23 windows smashed, and 63 arrests were made. The next day, thieves who stole 64 sticks of gelignite and detonators from a quarry at Hillbank left a note for police which read, "Thank you, now watch out cops at Glenelg." Nothing further happened at Glenelg as regards explosives, but alcohol restrictions were soon in place to limit public drinking. Riots were nothing new to Glenelg, however. It was reported in 1910 that the annual Guy Fawkes riots had occurred again, as expected. Pranksters would hide in dark corners and let off fireworks at random. In 1910 a rock was thrown at police, cutting the head of Constable Clark. Although the stone thrower was promptly arrested by a plainclothes officer, someone else took aim at Constable Keane as he raced to assist Clark and felled him with a bottle. The crowd liberated the stone thrower, and just as occurred 73 years later, the police took refuge in their station with a baying mob outside. Eventually they baton charged and dispersed the crowd, but no arrests were made. On the 20th of September 1990, a mysterious death occurred just off of Jetty Road. Hindmarsh Street had largely disappeared beneath a Coles supermarket some years earlier. Just the top end of the narrow lane remained, converted into a short pedestrian mall, providing access to the supermarket and to public toilets adjacent to the car park. The body of Vicky Teresa McFarland was found in the woman's toilet. The 27-year-old had been there for hours with the tap running when her body was discovered by cleaners. The fittings of the tap had been removed and water had been running for possibly hours. Police declared the death a major crime and appealed for information. There was no sign of violence on the body or injury. Her belongings had been gone through and burnt, but she might have done that herself. Vicky's body had ash down one side. Her death was found to have been caused by an overdose of clonazepam and morphine. But had she taken the drugs herself, or had she been murdered with it by somebody else? Clonazepam is a tranquilizer prescribed for seizures and panic attacks. In people who are already depressed, there is a risk of suicide when using the drug. Because the area was known to be a rendezvous point for the sale of illegal drugs, suspicion about Vicky's death was raised. A week after her death, police were still appealing for assistance. Vicky's body was kept at the morgue for nearly a month, even though investigation had come to a standstill. With this stalemate, Vicky's sister was demanding her sister's body be buried, and authorities relented. Vicky was buried in an unmarked grave at Centennial Park Cemetery on the 16th of October 1990, alongside her baby son Benjamin Joseph, who had died in March 1986. The unfolding decades failed to provide any clue whether Vicky McFarland had died accidentally, by suicide, or by murder, and the case was quickly forgotten. like the tragic death of Geoffrey John May, consigned to that murky twilight of unsolved cases in the dark corners of history.